Hey, um, take this off. Okay, awesome. Can you hear me well?
Yeah,
Perfect. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
you bet, man.
And I know Glenn is your father-in-law, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I know Glenn for a while now,
Oh,
and
cool.
David. So it's kind of like, um, I know you're the asset management side of things, right? So,
Yeah.
so I wanted to kind of bring you were there with Napa as well, right?
Yeah, I was with Napa, for almost 5 years. And when we started this new thing with Obsidian, uh, became partner. So me, David, and Glenn are now partners.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, keep that for the show.
Okay.
What I need is if you can adjust your camera a little bit up because it cuts your head. Yeah, there
Like
you go.
that?
And then just give me 5 seconds of a smile so we can cut a shot for the headline. Awesome. Okay. I'm going to count us in, give the intro, introduce you, and then give you like a few minutes to tell the audience about you, your history, and so on.
Okay.
I like this as a conversation kind of flowing.
Cool.
So no hard script.
Okay. Got it.
Okay.
That makes sense. No problem.
Awesome. Three, two, one. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Multifamily Operators Podcast. And today we have David. Help me with your Mike. I'm sorry. Okay, let me count us in. I forgot. Uh,
Okay. That's
um,
okay.
yeah, no, it's there's just so many. We usually batch them, so I apologize for that.
You're okay.
How do I spell your last name? So I won't butcher it.
Woodfield.
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 Okay, no
Yep.
problem. Again, three, two, one. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Multifamily Operators Podcast. And this is your host, Joseph Goslan. And today we have Mike Woodfield. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm
Thanks
doing
for having me.
great. Thank you for being on the show. Usually we start the show with a few minutes where our guests get to tell the audience who they are, what they've done so far. Uh, um, Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I guess first and foremost, I have two beautiful kids and a beautiful wife at home, and they're a huge support to me. But on the business side, I have had the opportunity to be involved in the acquisition and hold and disposition of about 5,000 apartment units over the course of about 5 or 6 years. More recently, delving in on the ownership side, previously really just focusing on asset management, but had the opportunity of about putting about 800 units of my own with some partners under contract and now holding those. So had some good experience in the multifamily industry here recently. Really focused on the asset management side of the business for the first 4 years, 5 years of my career in it in real estate, doing maybe about 30 to $40 million in renovation works on value add deals, creating millions of dollars in in value added to our investors, and had a great run in 2014 through 2019. So just trying to figure out 2020 like everyone else.
Yes, that's it's definitely a special one.
Yeah,
But no, awesome. Thank you for that little brief, and we're definitely going to dive into a few of these things. And this podcast is specializing in operators, right? So that's why your rich experience in asset management is what drew us to you and have you on the show as a guest. So let's start with a little bit of just so the audience can understand the kind of properties you were working on. Obviously,
sure,
multifamily. What kind of class? What kind of locations? Which states you guys were in?
sure.
Give us a little bit of that.
Yeah, of course. We mostly focused on Central Texas. We did delve down into properties in the Houston area, along the coast, in Corpus Christi, but mostly in your San Antonio, Austin, and really DFW, the Fort Worth area, is where we had probably over half of our assets. We were ranging from a C product to a B minus product. Most of them were value add deals where we did some pretty heavy lifts and renovations. Some renovations were light, deferred maintenance. Some were completely down, 0% occupancy, bottom from a bank type of deals where we brought them back online and breathe some life back into them. So a wide array of things. And now more recently, we've gone into some development and building things ground up. Got a few projects underway doing that, moving dirt on 50 units here in Leander, Texas right now. All the site work's done on it, and we're ready to pour some foundations here in the next 3 weeks. So
That's awesome.
those are typical asset classes I've dealt with and I'm looking forward to dealing with in the future.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's great. One of the main questions that we always ask is third party versus in-house property management. And I know you guys had somewhat of a unique perspective on that one.
Yeah. So Glenn, who's the CEO of Obsidian, he grew up in property management. I mean, really, that's what he did. And he's been my mentor in this business for years now. And so I kind of tend to think more like a property management. I think more operationally than most apartment owners do, much to the chagrin of many of the property management companies we work with. I dive too far into their business, but we do use third-party management right now. In the past, we have owned and operated our own management company.
Yeah, so you guys literally went the opposite direction than everybody else we talked to, right?
Yeah,
Everybody starts with third party and then they transition to self-management.
Well, and I think we'll get back to a point where we do that. Really, the reason for that was Glenn's former business and business partner, they went their separate ways, and as part of that, the management company was also sold. So right now, we just don't have the unit count to justify starting our own management company. But once we get that unit count back up, we definitely would look to do that. So
okay, so that leads to multiple follow-up questions, right?
Sure.
So you say you don't have the unit count.
Yeah.
What is a unit count in your mind, in your experience, to justify self-management?
I think a good rule of thumb would be 1,000 units, 1,500 units north of that. When you get into property management, those companies generally aren't super profitable. What it does is it gives you the control over your operations, and that's why people move towards that. Your private equity groups and other investors really like when they see you self-managing, as they know that you have the control over the property. You're not having to deal with so much red tape. We think maybe 1,500 units, because you start getting to where you can get enough management fees to where you can really bring some resources in that you need to properly run a property, right? Like, before that, you're running so lean that maybe your property will suffer because it's not getting enough attention. Maybe bills are getting paid a little late because you don't quite have the accounting staff you need. Maybe you have one regional that's spread thin over the portfolio rather than having two because you can't afford them, right? So you really have to be strategic and really have the budget to go in and do what needs to be done. So that's why I say 1,000 to 1,500 units, maybe in 2,000 units, you have a budget where you can hire a regional or two. You can get a good accounting team. You can have maybe a president of the management company that's overseeing all the operations. Maybe you can have some training that takes place where someone can come in and train the on-site staff on the software and different things like that. So you can really support that management company at that point.
Gotcha. So how is the experience on both ends, right? So you used to be self-management and you had absolute control. And I would just want to reiterate what you said earlier. Most people transition to self-management, not because it's a profit center, but it's a control mechanism.
That's right.
You get a lot better control. So you go from 100% full control to now having to work with third party.
Yeah.
How does that transition? Where do you see the
maybe I can give you some like pros and cons or something like that. I mean, with the owner managed, us managing it ourselves, the control was huge. You get stuff done much quicker. If you needed something paid quickly from the lender, hey, cut this check today. Okay, done. Boom. Whereas like the company we work with now, they're like, we only cut checks on Wednesdays. So you submit something and it doesn't get cut till Wednesday, or if I wanted to send a quarterly distribution, okay, this done tomorrow. Okay, got it. Boom, it's out. Well, now it's like, well, we send that out on Thursdays. So if you send it on a Friday, you have to wait 5-6 days for it to get out the door. So those things can be frustrating. And when we owned our own company, we were able to handle that, quickly. Mm-hmm. It's with the third party, I would say some of the cons are getting in touch with the people that are the decision makers can be a little bit tougher because they're so covered up with other clients that they're trying to get, they're out selling and getting more customers, right? So you don't get that individual attention, which can be frustrating. You don't have really control over the accounting team, which I had mentioned is frustrating. The regional doesn't work for you. So at the end of the day, they're answering to their boss. So that's frustrating. The pros of working with a third party is if you work with good ones, they usually have really good employees because they, are a management company. That's what they're known for. They have good systems and operations in place because they've been doing it forever and that's all they do. So you'll get some benefit and some consistency out of them that you may not get out of a, owner managed operation. I would say
less liability.
Yeah, less liability. Yeah, exactly. I would say some of the cons of doing owner managed is that it sucks your time. If you're the one that's doing it, then inevitably you will get pulled into property management. So we know in our business that property management doesn't necessarily make you the money, acquisitions does. Running properties really well makes you the money at the end of the day, right? Mm-hmm. We know that, but it doesn't generate, the acquisitions. And so, if you get pulled into property management, you might do a few less deals a year. You may not be out, pounding the pavement looking for new deals because you're busy trying to establish operations and you can't afford to hire somebody else. So you're the guy, right? And if the apartment gets set on fire and, whatever happens, the water gets shut off or a pipe bursts, they're calling you.
Yep.
What should I do? Right. And so, doing owner managed stuff, it really puts a lot of problems and issues at your property on your plate, where you have to deal with a lot of it. Whereas if you pay a third party, it puts those issues and problems on their plate and they try and get everything taken care of before they approach you with something significant. So I would say those are some pros and cons of maybe both.
Yeah, that sounds good. So now that you do work with third party, how do you go about selecting one? What is important to you in a third party property management company?
So I really like to meet with the owners of that company, sit down and discuss kind of philosophy, see how they operate and how they manage their staff and their team. I really look at their regionals really heavily. What kind of regional managers do you have? The experienced, have they been in the game a long time? Because really a regional manager can make or break you if they're going to pay attention to you. How spread thin are the regional managers? Like I'll look at that because right off the bat, I know if you got a regional manager with 12 properties, I don't even want to touch that.
Yeah.
I don't want that regional manager on my property because he or she's not going to be looking at that ever. He's never going to dive into the details. They're not going to go visit the site. They're not going to look at, my P&L and I'm going to end up doing their job for them. So I like a company that doesn't run super lean, that has the resources, that understands the business. I also am getting my CPM designation, Certified Property Manager, through IRM, which is kind of like, a master's in property management, if you want to call it. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I really want to understand this side of the business. not just the ownership, but what they do day to day. And so I look for operators and owners of management companies that have their CPM, because I know what it's taken for me to get mine, and it's intense, and they have
Hmm.
to be pretty skilled and pretty smart to get it. So those are some of the things I'll look for when I'm kind of vetting a property management company.
Okay, yeah, that's good. You said mentioned sit and talk to the owners, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean for the size of the property management company? Are they managing 600 units, 6,000, 60,000? Because I know the
Uh-huh.
big nationals, good luck sitting with the owners, right?
Yeah, yeah, that'll never happen. So the operators that we usually sit down and work with have anywhere from 20 to 50,000 units. And if they don't have time to sit down with me and talk about my property and our property and how we want it run, then I probably wouldn't go with them. So I mean, I want to have their attention, because that's what we're paying them for, is to have their attention. So
Yeah,
if
and if you can get their attention in the sale process, right,
yeah,
you'll never gonna get
they'll
it when you're
never
already a client.
yeah, they don't want to talk to you. They've gotten so big, they're so insulated that they don't even deal with the issues anymore. So, you know, I like something that's maybe a little bit smaller than those big national groups that just wouldn't have time for you or to sit down with you and take care of things. So,
So how does your work with that third party look like, right? How often
yeah.
do you talk to? Who do you talk to? How
Hmm.
often do you go on site?
Sure. Yeah, I actually have a monthly asset management checklist that I fill out every month just to keep myself accountable. Anybody else that does asset management, I keep, have them fill that out as well. Um, but essentially, if a property is being renovated, or it's under 90% occupancy, or we're not hitting some of the metrics we need to be hitting, um, I'll I'll meet in some form or fashion once a week. So whether that's a phone call or an on-site visit, or whatever, a Zoom meeting, we'll do that once a week until we're hitting our goals. And what that does is that kind of keeps the property management company knowing that you're paying attention, and they don't like that. They don't like having you in their business. They just want to run the property. You need to leave them alone. So, they'll do whatever it takes for you to leave them alone. And so, if a property is doing what it's supposed to be doing, I do a once a month site visit, and then usually I'll have a phone call, once once a month with either the property manager or the regional manager. I'm usually the regional manager, just to get some sort of detail on what's going on. So that's basically my communication. Sometimes I'll communicate with the accounting team, like I said, to get something taken care of, or if we have a quarterly distribution, I'm sending over those distribution lists and how much to send out to investors. So that's basically my communication with them.
And do you guys have one third party management you're working with, or you have more than one based on
Um,
area, location?
Yeah, so we have more than one. Sometimes you get into markets where a certain management company isn't really managing anything around there. And what happens when let's say, for example, they're a DFW based management company, and you want to pull them down to Houston with you. Well, now their regional manager, who probably lives in Dallas, is going to have to drive to Houston. So that regional manager is probably going to make it down there once a quarter. And so you'll be going to the property more than that regional manager. And you have to make sure that regional is going to the property once a week, to visit with the staff and to work through things. So I like to find management companies that are, their core would be in that market, that they're going to manage that property for me. So if we're in Oklahoma City, I want an Oklahoma City management company there. If we're in Dallas, a Dallas based, Houston based. And so we'll work with multiple management companies because of that, just to avoid the headache of me already knowing, if you don't have the economies of scale in a market, you're not going to spend all your management fees that you made for travel and different things like that, so that's usually how we approach that. So to answer your question, we would use multiple management companies.
Okay. So you mentioned the checklist of your asset management activities, right? So we're looking at talking to the management companies. We're talking to investors, I'm assuming, investor distributions and communication. What else do you have that goes towards the operation of the property and not necessarily the financial side of things?
The operation of the property. Um, you know, when we do visits, we go and we look at unit turns to make sure that they're not sitting on product that's not made ready. That's huge for us. I follow the 4 Ps: um, people, product, price, promotion. That's a huge one in the IRM courses. Um, you know, if you have to have the right people on board, on staff, and I always am looking at that. Do we have the right people? Do we have the right leasing agent? Is he or she bubbly salesman, saleswoman? Do we have the right manager? Are they experienced? Can they see things that others can't see? Are they keeping their staff in line and moving forward? Do you have a really strong collections person or assistant manager that is out pounding the doors and getting that rent collected? Product on the make readies and the turns, does it look good? Do the units stink? You know, like cigarettes, you know, or
Hmm.
whatever from the previous tenant. Are they not clean? On their checklist board, does it say made ready? But when you go and walk it, it's not made ready, right? Do they have available product? If they have 10 vacant units and there's only one available, they're never going to fill those 10 up ever. You have to get units
Yep.
made ready. You have to have all 10 made ready. So how do you get there, right? Coming up with a plan with the property management company to make sure you have available product. Um, Price, you know, oftentimes you'll look at your unit layout and I look at each unit occupancy. So if you have like a 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and a 2 bedroom, 1 bath, and a 2 bedroom, 2 bath, and a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, I'll look and see what the occupancy is at each one of those unit types, because sometimes
Hmm.
you'll be 90% or 99% on the 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and you'll be 100% on the 2 bedroom, 1 bath. And then you go to the 3 bedroom, 2 bath. You're like, we're 40%. This is where all of our vacancy is. What's going on here? And then you do a market study and you're like, you guys are overpriced by $250. Lower the rent. You know, I've had that happen so many times, right? So you go in and you look at that people, product, price, and then promotion. How are they selling the product? You know, do they do little mini models? How does the model look? You know, are they selling the product? Is the leasing path clean? The tour path, is it clean? You know, that type of thing. You know, how are they doing marketing? You know, what does your Facebook look like? Are your Google ads bad, or not Google ads? Is your Google rating low? You know, are they making any
Hmm.
effort to change it? You know, all these things are what I look at. So
Man, you're adding so much value for all of our listeners. I
nice.
really appreciate that.
I'm glad I'm not
Um,
taking away value, because some might
yeah.
say I do that. So
Yeah, no, that's great. So, just one thing that you touched on, and some of our audience might not know. Can you describe what a mini model is and
yeah.
what's the difference from a model unit?
So sometimes you don't want to do a model unit. Maybe you have like 100 unit or a 50 unit apartment complex, and you don't want to have that vacancy loss, because at the end of the day, that's what it is, from a model. You want to be 100% leased and maximizing your revenue. So what you could do is, you know, you could get like some decorations, some smaller decorations, put some music on, make it smell good in the unit. Put some drinks in the fridge, some bottles of water in the fridge, some snacks out on the countertop, and a few decorations. And you can just move them from unit to unit as you lease them. So
Hmm.
when you
Yep.
walk in, it just looks better. You know, it feels a little bit more homey, and it sells it a little bit better.
Yeah, we do the same. We have just knickknacks, right? So
Mm-hmm.
in the bathroom, there will be a towel on the towel rack. There will be curtains on the
Mm-hmm.
on the tub.
Sure.
A soap holder,
Mm-hmm.
a couple of dishes, like a couple. We like to put like a couple of wine
Yeah,
glasses
sure.
and a bottle of wine and kind of like welcome home sign. So you can go to the dollar store and pick this up for
Yeah,
like $30,
it's
right?
cheap.
But it makes a big difference when somebody walks in versus just seeing walls and counters
Yeah.
and the carpet.
You know, you could even give that stuff to the resident when they lease the unit, you know, bury it into their, you know, a fee when they sign up if you want to, you know, like whatever, or just
Yeah,
give it to them as a promotion, you know. I
we,
mean,
we actually have like a little laundry basket that we put everything back
yeah, a
into and move to
sparkle
the
kit.
next one. Yeah,
They call that a sparkle kit.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we
So
have those too. Yes.
yeah. So I mean, those are, you know, easy things you can do that make someone just feel like, oh, these, you know, they care. This is nice, you know. And I didn't walk in here and I saw a roach running across the kitchen countertop and it's dirty. And, you know,
Yep.
I mean, I've had experiences where I gone into a unit and I'm like, well, this, you know, kind of one of the questions I asked when I showed the property is, show me the units that you're selling. That's really what we do. I mean, they're salespeople, you know, they're
Yeah.
selling units, you know, and show me what you're selling. And I go walk along a tour path and, you know, there's gravel and mulch that's spilled over into the concrete on sidewalk. I'm like, okay, that looks bad. And then I noticed that the exterior lights are on in the middle of the day. And I'm like, you're spending money there, you know, get those off. And then, you know, their response is it's always a photo cell issue, you know,
Yeah.
always, you know, it's always on.
Yeah,
Fix it,
but
right?
that's the thing. A photo cell is an $8 piece
That's
of,
right. Yeah.
you know, just a switch,
Yeah.
and another 10 minutes of work, and
Yeah.
instead of spending all that electricity on keeping
Yeah.
it on 24/7.
Yeah. But then we go look at the product and we go inside. And if, you know, I've had times where there's paint buckets still sitting on the floor from the painter that never got taken out. I'm like, you going to sell this? You know, I mean, there's paint buckets right there. Who's going to buy that?
Yeah.
Or, you know, it could be, you know, the sink's dirty, they never cleaned it on the turn, or, you know, maybe like the refrigerator's missing or whatever, right? You know, a unit's not completely made ready until it's completely made ready. So don't put
Yeah.
it made ready ever. And usually the property managers learn pretty quick with me that you don't put something as made ready unless it is in fact made ready.
Yeah.
So, that's usually like one of the first questions I ask. Let's go look at your product. Let's see what's going on. You know, that tells the whole story.
Do you secret shop them?
Yes, we do. We'll have people go and look. A lot of third-party management companies pay to have secret shops done of like their leasing agents and make sure they're, you know, asking the right questions and selling questions, and then they'll do have people go in and try and lease apartments and see how their tour goes. And so most third-party management companies do that, and they send us those reports. We'll call in and see, you know, like, you know, how they're doing it ourselves. We'll do that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course. You know, how they respond, how quickly they respond, do they follow up, you know, that type of stuff. So.
Yeah, it's really important because you might have a leasing agent, but you don't know if they're not following up, like you said, or if they don't set up appointments, or they don't do showings, or they do showings, but their closing rate is low. So looking at all these things is important. But when you secret shop, you realize that, oh, well, she walks around the property and just talks crap about the property. So no wonder she doesn't close, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That happened too.
Yeah.
Not on our properties, on another property that I was secret shopping for another owner. So yeah, so far we talked about buildings, right? We talked about the physical assets, but the buildings don't pay the rents, they don't pay the salaries, they don't pay anything, right? It's the residents that do.
Yeah.
So in your world, previously in the previous company and now, what do you guys do for your residents, right? How do you encourage retention?
Well, and I think that's an important question to ask, Joseph, because we're heading from a world where it wasn't resident focused. I mean, I don't know if any of the viewers have been awake in the past 6, 7, 8 years, but we've been raising rents over and over and over again for the past since 2013 on people. And, you know, it's like, well, if you don't want to pay it, leave. It's kind of been the attitude, you know, we'll find somebody else, they'll pay it. And as the economy changes, that attitude needs to change, right? To a more resident retention, because when things get bad, what you need is really good residents paying their rent, or else you're in big trouble. So we've been having a lot of conversations about that with our management companies that we work with. Is how are you taking care of the residents to make sure that they're loyal to the property and to us because we took care of them, and that they won't move when times get bad. So some of the things that we've done during COVID is, for a while we didn't charge any late fees. We weren't raising rates on renewals when renewals came up, and we did that for about 3 or 4 months, which was very costly to us, but we've seen less people move out as a result of that. We've been, working with them with some payment plans, which typically we haven't done in the past, and trying to help them out and be a bit more understanding about, this time and what we're facing. So those are some of the things that we've done for our residents that I think that they've certainly appreciated and, have reciprocated by staying there and paying their rent. So.
Yeah, and for our audience, just so we'll help them understand that retention is a super critical thing in our business, right? So a retained resident means I don't have to spend capital to turn the unit,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
And a retained resident that is happy will recommend friends and family to come live on the property. And statistically, there's a lot of research that shows that a resident that refer someone in and the person that was referred by someone on the property, statistically they stay longer and they renew their leases and so on. And it doesn't matter that you'll have a superstar leasing team up front leasing 20 units a month if you're losing 27 on the back end, right?
Yes.
So retention is super critical in our business, and a lot of people just focus on the leasing without realizing like you gotta close the back door.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just spending a lot of money.
Yeah, and there's other ways you can do that. You can go in and, something that I think we were doing in the past is we'll go in 3 months before, 4 months before their lease ends and say, how's it going for you? Anything that's in your unit that's bugging you, that's not been taken care of by, our staff already. And how can we fix it? How can we make it better? And it might be like, I need a new microwave, this one's old, and okay. And we get a new microwave for that unit. Or it could be, this light's burn out. It could be simple stuff, or it could be like a garbage disposal doesn't work or whatever. But going in and fixing those things for people are huge. Maybe it's painting the master bedroom a different color or something, like those types of things would go a long way with a resident.
Yeah, and it's surprisingly how people will tolerate a small thing like a dripping faucet or a cabinet door that's off the hinge, and they won't report it.
Yeah.
Because obviously if they report it, we'll jump on it and we'll take care of it, but they won't report it. But the problem is that they don't report it, but they hold it against you.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of like, I don't want to stay in this apartment. The faucet's been dripping for 6 months.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't tell anyone, but that doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's important, kind of like one of the things that we make sure is when we do pest control once a quarter, right? We go into every unit, we send one of our guys with the pest control guy, and we tell them, write down anything you see, right? So if you see a dripping faucet, let us know. We'll open the work order and we'll take care of it, right?
Yeah.
If you see something broken, if you see a torn carpet, if you see a blind that fell off, whatever it is, we'll take care of it, because like you said, a happy resident is a resident that renews and accepts an increase in rent and so on.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything in life, right? You got proactive and you have reactive,
Yes,
and
exactly.
if you're a proactive management company, you're doing things like that. If you're reactive, you're always on your heels, waiting for the next bad set of news to come rather than getting out and fixing problems, getting on top of it, communicating with the residents, getting in front of them, meeting them, knowing their names, all these things are so critical when it comes to retention.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys do a lot of heavy value add, right? You mentioned earlier, like empty properties, right?
Yeah.
Talk about heavy value add, right? So everybody buys a property and wants to increase rent or implement rubs. Can you give
Sure.
us 3, 4 things that help you increase income? We'll talk about the expense side in a minute. That help increase income or generate other income streams that are not the usual rubs and increase in rent.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, those are the basic ones, but here's a few other that I've thought were creative or have brought some value to our bottom line. Uh,
We love those.
yeah, sure. So a lot of times, like if you were to do some sort of pet audit of the customer base, you would find that probably 10% of the people that have pets are actually paying pet rent, especially in your kind of your C plus B minus assets. Usually you're way off on that. So you could do some sort of audit and go through and charge people that rent for those pets and maybe get a deposit, because those pets are very hard on the units. That's why you
Hmm.
you quite frankly, you deserve that extra rent because you're going to be paying for it on that turn.
Yep.
Um, so that would be one. Go through and be very thorough about that. Another one is parking, and not parking in the traditional sense, meaning like covered parking, you charge more, or a reserved parking stall, you charge more. Where if you're not paying for that, or if you don't have residents paying for reserved parking spots, you certainly can do that. You know, you can go and put numbers on, you know, the lots and lease those out as part of the lease and charge $20 or $15 for someone that when they pull in at night, they don't have to worry about finding a spot. They know where theirs is at.
Hmm.
That's worth $25 a month to them, probably.
Yep.
Um, the other one would be, you know, in these C class properties, you have a lot of traffic in there and maybe some troublemakers sometimes. And a lot of times those people don't even live at your property. That's usually the consensus, that it's not your residents that are causing the trouble. And so one good way for them to kind of stay out of the property, keep them at bay, is you hire a towing company, and the towing company will come in, and what they'll do is that they'll enforce a rule where, you know, if you park in our parking lot and you're a guest and you're not in the guest lot, you're parking inside of the apartment complex, you got to pay something like $3 or $5 a day to have your car parked there. So that does two things for you, right? First of all, it keeps people out that don't want to pay $5 a day or get towed.
Hmm.
Or they'll pay and you have another line item of income. So we have
Yeah.
a 250 unit property that they're paying, I think we get about $700-800 a month from that towing company
Wow.
as income
Okay.
to us, because they log on to this. I don't think it's an app. Maybe it's an app they download and they pay to park there. The other option would be if they do live at the unit, they come into the leasing office. We get them on the lease, right? So we can charge more for rubs.
Hmm.
We can bill back more on our utilities. We could probably charge a few other fees to get them on the lease because now we have to do paperwork again.
Hmm.
And we know that they live there now. And we give them a sticker and they can park there, right? But it helps you manage that where you don't have people just living there that aren't even residents. They're not even
Yep.
on lease, right? So that's been one creative way. The other one is you know, in apartments, you you know, pretty typically you collect a deposit, right? You know, and that deposit is not income. It doesn't hit
No.
your P&L as income, right? It's a liability actually.
Hmm.
And on your balance sheet, it will sit as a liability because you can't spend that money
Yep.
until that resident has moved out. And sometimes you give that money back if they were really good residents. You write a check and you send it back to them, or you take it out of the last month's rent or whatever. You know, they get that money back for being a good resident. Um, that being said, in some of these C plus, C minus assets, C assets that we've managed in the past, you do take some risk with those residents because sometimes they'll have an eviction, you know, from 5 years previous or something like that. So will charge a fee for that. We call it an opportunity fee, basically, where, you know, if they had a past that was
Hmm.
um, maybe a little bit checkered or whatever, not in the sense that like we're not allowing criminals or anything like that. But we do a vetting process and background checks and everything like that. No drugs, no, you know, assault, nothing like that. But maybe like 10 years ago they had, you know, an eviction, right? There's risks there.
Yeah.
So they'll pay a fee in addition And what we'll do is that comes in as income, and that kind of offsets, if they skip or, something like that. So those
Yeah,
are
we
some of
we
the,
call it a high risk fee.
yeah, yeah. Some people call it a risk fee. We call it an opportunity fee. I guess it sounds
I
a little
like
bit
that.
nicer.
I like that. Yeah.
But I guess it's really a risk fee. You're right. I mean, it's all tied to risk, and if people have had those things in the past, then they are a riskier tenant, and we have to
Yeah.
look at it that way. So those are two kind of, I guess, maybe three. I gave three the pet as well.
Yep.
That would be, here's another one with rubs. And I don't think that a lot of people look at this very closely. So listen carefully. When you are underwriting a property or you're buying a property, you look and from just a visual perspective, you see, okay, this owner is charging rubs. You can see it on the P&L. It's in the other income, electric, gas, water, right? Trash, whatever. We're billing all this stuff back, right? You can see it. But maybe what you're not seeing is what percentage they're billing back, right? Joseph, where do you sit? Where do you live? Are you up in Dallas? Where are you?
Yeah, I'm in Dallas.
Yeah, okay. Do you recall off the top of your head what percentage of the utilities we can bill back? So 90%
90,
legally in Texas?
95, I think 90 or
95%?
95, something like
Yeah,
that.
so there's a legal amount we can actually bill back. But you may take over a property and they've only been billing back 20%,
Well, I
right?
think there's a little bit more regulations into that one. Do you have an
Mhm.
irrigation system or not? But
Sure. Yeah, right.
you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
go up to, yeah,
Yeah, irrigation would be lower, right?
yeah.
That you could bill back, and yes, there are different regulations, but let's say you're billing back on your electric 20%. Well, what are the other people around you billing back? Is your neighbor across the street who's 95% occupied billing back 80%?
Yep.
Maybe you need to look at on your new leases trying to build back more, and capturing a bit more of that income on the rubs, so maybe don't just take it at face value, see how much you actually are charging if that's what the market is allowing you to charge. So
Okay.
that's the one thing I'll say about rubs.
Well, I'm going to take that one and tie it back to retention and what you
Mm-hmm.
said a minute ago about the parking, right? See how it all ties
Mm-hmm.
together.
Yeah.
If we know exactly how many people live in each apartment,
Mm-hmm.
that's a factor in the RUBS
Right.
calculations, right?
Right.
So the more accurate your knowledge about how many people are in each unit, the more quote unquote fair the RUBS allocation is, which means the people in the one bedroom or the studio apartments will pay less than the people that have 4 or 5 people in a 3-bedroom apartment,
That's right.
right? And
Yep.
then that helps you with retention because they don't think that you're overcharging for utilities.
Right. That's exactly right.
So it's kind of like all these things come together, right?
It's all tied together. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So now let's take a look at the other side of the coin, right? On the expenses side of things, right?
Okay.
What are 3, 4 things that you like to do to decrease expenses?
Huh. Sometimes we increase expenses, believe it or not. If we go in and take over a property um, that is completely deferred and the owner hasn't been maintaining things,
Well, but that
our
would be capex. That wouldn't be opex
well,
necessarily,
well,
right?
well,
So you
it
want
could
to
be.
look at
It
the
could be
opex.
operating expenses. I'm talking about maintaining things, right? Like it could be a landscape company, right?
Hmm.
And they've had like a landscape company coming in once a month, and as soon as the grass grows knee high, they cut it. Well, I want mine cut every week. And not only that, I want you to make sure that there's never fallen branches or trees. I want to make sure that you keep the canopies above head so when people are walking on the sidewalks, they're not getting hit by branches. I wanted
Hmm.
you to make sure that there's new flowers in the flower beds and there's seasonals, So we may be spending more money than the previous owner on landscaping because we just want it to look nicer,
Yeah.
right? And we think that that will get us a return on how much people will pay for rent and how long they'll stay there for. So, it's not always about cutting expenses is what I'm saying, right? So the OpEx side, I mean, yeah, the deferred maintenance, all that stuff, your capital expenditures will cover that, or it should. But, on the operating expenses, I would say that sometimes we do end up spending more. Some things that we cut, like some owners were previously paying for like cable, and they pay for cable on like every unit or something
Hmm.
like that. I think that's a waste of money. Most people stream things nowadays anyway. So we took over a property, not too long ago, and we canceled the contract with the cable company. It saved us like $4,500 a month.
Yep.
So that was an immediate $4,500 to NOI without just canceling it. And the reason why I made that choice is because I went and looked at all the properties surrounding ours, and none of them were paying for cable,
Yep.
And I'm like, they don't care. These residents don't care. We had one person come in the office complain.
Yep. And that's something we just did as well in one of our properties. And it's kind of like, it was we decided that 6 months ago, right? So every lease that we created since that decision literally said you're going to get this for the next few months, and then it's going to die at that date, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So all of these are fine. And we figured the people that that had those in the contract, will take that off their contract, so we won't charge the fee, and they can go get themselves. And if one of them comes in and complain, then we can handle that by, even if we have to get him the package, it's still worth. You were paying $45, we were paying $9,700 a month.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. So
it's a lot of money.
That's one thing I'll definitely look at. The other one is vacant electric or common electric.
Yes.
Like we already touched on that. It's always, Mr. Woodfield, there's a photo cell, and I'm like, don't tell me that. Just fix it. I don't want to know, unless like we have severe electrical problems that we need to handle and come out of pocket for, just fix it and get the lights off, and so that's another one I look at all the time. Vacant electric, common electric, vacant electric. So walk-in units, and you walk in, and the first thing I do is I feel for the AC.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I feel that freaking cold hit my face, I'm going to look at the manager who's walking units with me. I'm like, why is it cold in here?
Yeah.
Right. Or if there's a fan on or lights on, or the refrigerator's open and turned on or whatever. I'm just like, guys,
yeah,
this is 101, and then their first response is always, oh, it's the vendors. Every time. I'm like, I don't care. They're not the ones that we pay to run this. It's you.
Yeah.
So you got to go behind them and shut it off. Or if you find a vendor that's leaving them on, you fire them, bring in another vendor. So we come down really hard on that, because it's a waste of money. I mean, at the end of the day,
it's a big waste of money.
It's a big waste of money, and it can be thousands of dollars a month.
Yep.
For a big property, it could be $10,000 a month that you're spending on just vacant units with electricity,
Yep.
and it's silly. So that's another one that I really look at closely, just to make sure that we're not, throwing money in the garbage can,
Yeah.
So
on the subject of electric, I'm going back to the income. One of the things that we came up with, or not, we didn't come up with, but one of the things that we utilized is
you invented it.
Yeah, no, is that our utility billing company has this service, because they're getting all the utility bills, including the vacant electric. So they're looking and they're comparing that to the rent roll to make sure that we're not paying electricity for residents. Because the way most of properties are set up, and that this is a switch you can turn on and off with your electric provider, is that when a resident moves out and cancel their service, they automatically pass it to your name. And then so you could find yourself in a situation where somebody moves in and didn't transfer electricity to their name, or we actually had that happen to us. Somebody called the electric provider, told them they left, and they automatically switched it to us while they were still living in the apartment. So we obviously have a clause in the contract that says you're going to be billed $50 fee and whatever you owe us for every month that we find out. And then that utility billing company is doing that basically for half the fee. So if we charge $50, they get 25. If they found someone, awesome, they get to bill, and we get to bill, they get to get paid. If they found no one, I didn't have to pay for it. So it's a win-win for everybody.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it helps both on the income, right? Because you can get the fees and get this paid back.
Sure.
And it helps with the expenses because you don't pay electricity for somebody else.
Love it. That's great. Good work.
So, Mike, I'm sorry.
I think you should tell people you invented that.
Yeah, there you go. uh, it's a service somebody else provides, so I can't really claim that. Um, but I want to be conscious of your time, and you've brought a lot of value today.
Oh, thank you.
If you could go back 10 years
Hmm.
and talk to young Mike, right, to
Hmm.
yourself, what
Yeah.
advice would you give yourself back then?
Oh man. Um, Geez, that's a tough question, right? There's so much I would say, but I mean, I'd probably tell myself, um, hmm, you got to give me some more direction here. This is too broad for me.
Well,
I can't do
let's
on a
stay in
broad
the
scale.
apartment.
In the apartment, okay, let's stay in the apartments. Okay, buy and hold, I guess. I don't know. Focus on the cash flow more. I don't. I mean, like, gosh,
Well, there's
one
got
thing
to be a story behind that one. What's focus
well,
on the cash flow?
Well, I think that sometimes when you're operating your own properties and you get caught up in acquisitions, that you forget that, like, really at the end of the day, you're providing a good experience for people to live there. And as a result of that, it should cash flow and you should be able to return your investors some money, and really those are the two things that you need to focus on as an operator or as an owner is, are my residents happy and my staff on site, are they happy and doing a good job for me? And am I getting enough money to where I can send a check back to these people that put trust in me? And I think that is highly important. That we always look at that and not get caught up in just whether it's property operation problems or buying new deals. As
Yeah,
we can get distracted.
that's a great advice.
Yeah. So I would tell myself, focus on those basic things, and I don't know. I don't really have too many regrets, Joseph, to be honest with you. And I think that a lot of advice comes out of regret, from
Yeah.
your past, like I did this one time, so you should watch out, type of thing. But I don't have too many regrets from the past 10 years of my life. I mean, good things have happened, I feel like things have gone great, and one piece of advice I'd probably give myself is stick with the markets. um,
Yeah.
Another good piece of advice is don't let yourself fool yourself when it comes to underwriting. Don't talk yourself into deals that aren't deals because of
Mhm.
fees and different things. Those things can, those big dollar signs can be so enticing, but at the end of the day, that property's got to work at those numbers you buy it for. And
Yep.
if they aren't correct, then it's painful, man. And it's not worth it ever, so buy
Yeah.
right. That's
We
my advice. Buy right.
Well, we always say on the podcast, you make your money when you buy, you lose your money on operations,
That's right.
right?
Yes.
So that's kind of like we like to stick with that
Yeah.
motto.
I love that. That's better advice than I gave. So yes.
Awesome. If our listeners wants to reach out, talk to you, discuss investment opportunities with
Sure.
Obsidian, how can they find you? And we'll put everything in our show notes as well.
Okay, perfect. You can reach out to me on my email, mike@obsidiancapitalco.com. You can get it on Obsidian Capital Co. Website, obsidiancapitalco.com. We have an investor portal there that you can sign up and get on our distribution lists that we send out to investors and see what we're doing, what's coming up, and everything. I also I don't know if you mind me doing a plug. I help
Go
people
ahead.
with asset management. If a lot of times what I've found is that people, they can learn how to buy properties. There's a lot of people out there that will show people how to buy properties, but there's very little people out there showing you what to do after you bought it. And I've
That's why
gotten a
we
lot
have
of,
this podcast.
that's why you have this podcast. And I am kind of coach people or mentor a few people doing that. So if anybody's interested in that, shoot me an email and be happy to talk to anyone, want to
Awesome.
invest or just want to shoot the breeze about multifamily, want to go grab lunch, whatever, so.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much for taking the time today. You've brought a lot of value,
Hey,
and I'm sure our listeners would love this episode.
cool. Thanks, Joseph. I appreciate having me on.
Awesome. And for you, the listeners, if you want to listen to more episodes, feel free to subscribe on iTunes, Stitchers, SoundCloud, and now on Amazon as well. Please leave us a review, 1 star, 5 stars, whatever you decide. We'll appreciate any review. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again in the next episode. Awesome. Thank you so much, man. I
Done?
appreciate it. Yeah, we're
Okay.
good.